Hey everyone, welcome back to the Broke Coder. Now, in this video, we will be talking about Git and GitHub. This is the first video in the video tutorial series in which we will be discussing what Git and GitHub is and how do we use it. Now, before we go ahead and start using Git and GitHub, we first need to understand what Git is and what GitHub is. So if you just want to go ahead and look up Git on Google, this is what you'll see. Now here it shows that Git is a free open source distributed version control system designed to handle everything from small to large projects with speed and efficiency. Now what's important here is this word, version control system. To make sense, let's just go back ahead a bit and I'll open up Paint, and with my horrible drawing skills we'll discuss a few things. Now imagine you have a project, say it's a software project that you've been working on, and you started the project, you added some initial features in it, and let's say it's at this point here. Imagine this is the point. Just keep imagining. This is the first point. Let's call it the first version, and then maybe say after a certain period of time you thought that, okay, now I'm gonna make this version of the same project. It's now the version 2, and then maybe after some more time you decided to make another version. This is a bad version. Decided to make another version of the program. This is the version 3. Now say not at version 3 and maybe you decided that, okay, maybe version 3 was pointless, or maybe version 3 is not what you had in mind and you'd like back your version 2. You'd like to go back to version 2. How would you do that? You can't just delete every line that you wrote. Maybe you intermixed some things, or maybe it's just too complicated, and that's where stuff such as version control system, VCS comes in. VCS stands for version control system, as we saw before here, and it's just a software whose responsibility is to handle things like these, things like making sure the versions of your software are recorded, making sure the versions of your software are accounted for, so that when and if you want to go back to a version, you can always go back. If we want to see it in a code way, just to understand better, how about let's just go here and say we create a feature 1 which has a bunch of code here, say a equals 10, b equals 20, c equals 30, and then we create feature 2 and say in feature 2 we make a equals 5, not a, z equals 6, r equals 9, and then we say print hello. We're just basically making some stuff up, and then we create another feature, say feature 3, and maybe the feature 3 that we are trying to create has some collisions with our older features, like I'm changing the value of a, so maybe that might cause some problem in my code. This is just a example, don't take this for face value, but you get the point. Sometimes maybe the feature that you are making or the additions you're doing to your code might not be what you want, or maybe you just don't want them. I don't want feature 3 anymore. Now, not in every project or every program that you write, it won't be as easy as just deleting, and it certainly won't be as easy as undoing everything. Why? Because it's going to be thousands of hundreds of lines of code, and you can't just go back and do that stuff. Now there is an alternative where you can create a new file. Say, okay, here I'm going to create another file where I'm going to copy all of this code, paste it here, and then I'm going to make a feature 3 and see if it works. If it doesn't work, okay, fine, then I'll go back to this file. That's acceptable as well, but it gets tiresome pretty soon. What do you do if you have to make like 100 features? Do you make 100 different files? Doesn't work that way. You're just gonna end up tiring yourself. That's where version control system comes in. It helps you keep track of all of those versions on its own. It doesn't, you can imagine it does store separate files, but in reality it just stores the differences that you do. Now, what Git is just a software that runs on your local system. Now Git runs on my system, and whatever I ask it to save, it saves that data into my system. Now I can have 7 versions of this project, 10 versions of this project. It's up to me, and it stores all of them for me, so that at any point in time, if I want to go back to one of those versions, I can just go back directly. I can go back from version 3 to version 1, or say if I have version 7 and I want to go back to version 4, I can. And then maybe I can go a different path. I can try some other features that I did not try here. It's all up to us. So that's the kind of ease version control system introduces to us. And as far as how to use Git comes, using Git is a bit not straightforward. You can take a guess as we either use bash or we use a GUI. So you can actually go to the Git website for downloads and all, but I'll be showing that in another video. This is just for explanation purposes. Whereas GitHub, now most people have a doubt, like, if Git is a version control system, then why do we have GitHub? GitHub is just a website that makes sure all of your files are on the internet. Now Git only stores them on your system. That's a bad system. That's a really bad system. Anyways, Git just stores them on your system. It's only visible to you. No one else can see what changes you're making, or even if you have a project. Whereas GitHub puts them online. It's available for everyone to see. Everyone can see your code. You can share your code with everyone, and you don't have to waste your memory saving those projects in your file. In your system. You can access them from anywhere. So that basically sums up the explanation about what Git and GitHub is. So just to go over a recap, Git is nothing but an open source software that runs on your system. It's a version control system, which means it looks after all of your software projects and files, make sure that each of the versions, each of the updates, each of the changes that you do in them remains, and it maintains all of the versions which you can go back to. Whereas GitHub is an online cloud service. You can say that GitHub is an online cloud service that stores all of your projects. And in GitHub terminology, your projects are not called projects, they are called, that's a big font, that's a really big font, hold on, this is oh yeah, right, now man. So in GitHub, what we have is, you don't call them projects. In GitHub you call it repositories. I didn't write that shit. Repositories. In In normal language you might call them projects, but in GitHub you call them repositories. Now we'll be talking about GitHub in much more detail in the next video, and I'll be showing you how to create a GitHub profile and how to start your first repository. We won't be calling them projects now, we'll be calling them repositories. How to create your first repositories, push your code, and all of that GitHub terminology. So with that, we come to an end of this video. Be sure to like it, comment down below on what you'd like to see next, and subscribe and keep coding, guys.